We're excited today to have Thomas Sanchez, co-founder and CEO of Social Driver. Thomas has been an integral part of the fabric of this city for several years and is helping lead the mayor's Inclusive Innovation Technology Council. He has a wide variety of experience. We've been happy at the partnership to have worked with Thomas and his team on a variety of projects, including the WDCEP House at South by Southwest, and certainly here today. So we're going to turn it over to Thomas. Let's give him a round of applause as we welcome our next session.
Woo! All right. Well, welcome everybody. This is a hot topic, I think. The issue of inclusion and innovation is being talked about all over. You know, whenever I travel around the country, I am in different communities, and this is a topic that people bring up. But we're really lucky here in DC because from day one, when Mayor Bowser and her administration came in, they said inclusive innovation is going to be a key priority. And we, as a council, the ITIC, we are a group of really volunteers from all over the community. Some of us have education background. I'm an entrepreneur, others are entrepreneurs. Some people work for larger companies. But we all have a different perspective on both the inclusive and the innovation space. And we came together, and in 2016, we published a really groundbreaking report called The Pathways to Inclusion. And in it, we reinforced back the key priorities that Mayor Bowser has for the inclusive innovation space here in DC. One, our aim is to create 5,000 tech jobs from a diverse workforce, which I think is a huge goal to go after. Two, help diverse and underrepresented entrepreneurs build and launch 500 new tech businesses in DC. Again, as a tech entrepreneur, I think the focus on the entrepreneurs and kind of the getting those businesses started is an amazing thing to hear from the administration. And then three is to foster an inclusive, the most inclusive culture anywhere on the East Coast when it comes to our tech ecosystem. And so the five of us have been working very closely on these goals. So it's really great that we get the opportunity to be here to share some of our work with you, both the work that we've been doing on the ITIC and the work that we're doing in our own private jobs and companies. I'm going to just quickly introduce everybody. I'm going to let you guys introduce yourself, but Joy is with the Deputy Mayor for Economic Planning and Development, DMPED. She's with the office there. Joy is amazing to work with. I have been working with her for years now, and she brings a level of leadership and vision from DMPED into the community and has true lasting relationships with businesses and nonprofits all over the district. So she's wonderful. Elizabeth is really focused on training and tech training specifically. So we're going to hear a lot from her about that perspective and how training can make an impact for an inclusive environment. Erin is with the In3 incubator and co-working space. If you guys haven't checked that out, you really should. It's a 2-year-old startup. But it's wonderful. It's amazing. It's 2 years old because already it's become a huge pillar in the DC tech ecosystem. So he works super hands-on with entrepreneurs from diverse backgrounds every single day. And then Delano works on issues of tech infrastructure, early tech training, also kind of with the private and government collaboration, right? So it's a really amazing perspective. Before I kind of hand it over to everybody to introduce themselves, I'll introduce myself. I'm Thomas Sanchez, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Social Driver, which is a digital strategy and creative agency based here in Washington, D.C. I started the firm 8.5 years ago, and today we work with clients, leading nonprofits, socially responsible companies, associations all over the United States. Our headquarters are here in Washington, D.C., but we have offices in Kansas City, the Seattle area, and now we're getting started in Chicago. We have one person up there. So we're expanding, and as an entrepreneur and as a minority, here in DC, we've been able to take advantage of a lot of the programs and such that they have here in DC. We're a certified business enterprise, which means that you've went through a certification process with the city to say, hey, I'm based in DC, I meet these criteria. We're an MBE 100, which is a minority business enterprise. So we're certified through the Capital Region Minority Supplier Diversity Council. And then we're an LGBTBE, which is a LGBT business enterprise. And there's a group called the National Gay and Lesbian Chamber of Commerce that does that certification. And I think just all those certifications show you the way that we're thinking about inclusion here in the district, which is it's a big tent approach, I think. Joy, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about, kind of why it makes sense for you to be here on this panel.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you. Good morning. I'm Joy James. I'm the Tech Innovation Portfolio Manager with the Office of the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development. Everyone calls me Joy. I'm really excited that you all are here this morning for this conversation. So the Deputy Mayor for Planning and Economic Development, we call it DMPED. Our primary responsibilities are three things: making sure that there's enough affordable housing in the city, ensuring that we increase our commercial tax base, and ensuring that residents have access to jobs. And so in our group, I sit in the business development group, we really focus on the latter two. I started with DMPED about 5 years ago, just as DC was coming on the map as a startup hub. And we were, really growing, really getting our name on the map. People were paying a lot of attention to DC. And so when Mayor Bowser came into office, we wanted to refocus, how are we going to keep this energy going? What are the things we want to be doing? And so we started working on inclusive innovation projects, as Thomas mentioned. And that basically resulted in our 2016 Pathways to Inclusion report, which was our kind of first measurement on all the inputs into the tech economy and the tech ecosystem, from do you have access to broadband at home, to do you have access to capital to start a business, and all of the education and employment inputs in between. Did some measurements, made some recommendations. My role in the last few years since that report has come out is to work to make those recommendations a reality. Some of the results of them you see here on this panel, but I'll probably get into some of that a little bit later. But really looking to continue to work with our partners to make those recommendations, make those recommendations a reality, and to think of other ways that we can, as Thomas mentioned, bring people into the big tent and ensure that there is access to opportunity for all residents here in the district.
Great. Hi, my name is Elizabeth Lindsay, as Thomas said, and I'm really thrilled to be on this panel. I run an organization, a nonprofit organization based here in DC called Bite Back. And we train adults who haven't had the opportunity to learn how to use technology, and we help them move into careers that are computer-based or tech-based careers. And I love the fact that we were invited to sit on this panel, because when we think about what a tech job is and when we think about who a tech worker is, we are really focused on including not just people of color who went to college and have a CS degree. We work with individuals who never had the opportunity to go to college. We work with individuals who maybe have never learned how to use a computer. And there are thousands of folks in DC who don't have access to technology, and yet who are just incredibly brilliant and excited about the opportunities in the tech sector. And so I really want us to think differently. I want to push the way we think about diversity and inclusion. It's not just having people who look different, it's about bringing people in who have different types of experiences, who have very different resumes than the folks sitting up here.
Thank you. My name is Aaron Saunders. I'm the CEO and founder of the Inclusive Innovation Incubator. It's a public-private partnership between IN3DC and the Mayor's Office. We are a direct result of the Pathways to Inclusion report. Our focus really is creating a dense community of diverse entrepreneurs. We believe in this kind of philosophy of density collision, where if you kind of get a bunch of bright, smart, intelligent people all together in a tight community, that through that, good things will come. So for those of you who haven't been to IN3, it's an 8,000 square foot space on Georgia Avenue, right next to Howard University. We have large event space, we have classroom space, and we have open desks. We like to say we are not a co-working space. We are an innovation center, innovation space, who provides programs, services, and support for entrepreneurs. One of those services happens to be desks. Our goal really is to, provide access to opportunity. That's really what it's about. Kind of help people redefine what an entrepreneur is. We meet small business owners I actually had a small business owner come to me and say they didn't think IN3 was for them because they're not an entrepreneur, right? There's this definition of entrepreneurship that has kind of been hijacked so that small business owners don't think that they kind of fit that narrative. We want people to realize that two things. One, a small business is just as important as an entrepreneur. And two, that technology is so pervasive in the business world that it's hard to say that you're not a tech business or you don't need tech. So that's kind of the space that we play in, and I'll talk more about our specific programs later.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Delano Squires, Director of Connect DC, the district's digital inclusion program. So Connect DC lives within the Office of the Chief Technology Officer, OCTO for short. It's DC's lead IT agency. And what we do is we bring a full suite of digital inclusion services to district residents all across the city. We fund computer training from K through 12 all the way up to seniors. I've had the pleasure of working with both Aaron and Elizabeth over the last number of years. So we do, through BiteBack, as Elizabeth said, basic up through advanced certification classes. We've done classes for students with Aaron around coding. This year we also did some robotics. We provide information on public computing centers. So we have a tech locator that residents can use to find places where they can use a computer in their neighborhood, particularly for residents who don't have access to the internet at home. And in DC, that's about close to 25% of the residents don't have access at home. And if anyone knows anything about DC, in Ward 7 and 8, that is less than 50% of residents have access to the internet at home. So we provide info on public computing centers. We have an initiative called All Hands on Tech, where we fix the machines of residents for free. So we do free tech support at libraries, nonprofits, recreation centers. And then we wrap around all of that extensive public awareness campaigns. So we promote all the services I talked about, affordable home internet. So we try to, within our program, provide a full-orbed tech inclusion ecosystem for any district resident so they can plug in wherever they need support. So
That's great. So you can see we have Joy here with the city's perspective, and then we have kind of a mix of public and private partnerships here that can bring a different perspective to the conversation. But one of the things I heard both Elizabeth and Delano bring up is the access issue. You talk about access to training, you talk about access to internet. I think access was one of the gaps that was identified in why we needed to bring together the ITIC and why we need to do more work here in the district. Let's talk about that a little bit. What are some of the gaps that we have right now in DC when it comes to inclusive innovation?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, like Aaron said, there are no jobs that don't require the use of technology. Mm-hmm. And so we have a city where, like Delano said, and that is extremely segregated. In Ward 7 and 8, extremely high rates of unemployment. And at the same time, in those communities, folks don't have access to a device, to broadband, and to skills. I think that often we assume that low-income people do have access because they have a smartphone. But how many people in this room wrote the resume that you used to apply for your position on your smartphone, right? Like, I go to work and I sit down at a laptop. And so I think when we think about access, it really has to be what we call in digital inclusion circles the three-legged stool. We need to figure out how to get affordable broadband to folks, get the device, which a computer, and then also the training.
And I see that in my work every day. As I said, it's less than fewer than 50% of the residents in 7 and 8 have broadband access. To Elizabeth's point, many residents do have smartphones, but again, it's hard to do certain functions on the smartphone. One of the things that we do to sort of fill that gap is promote affordable internet service. So there are programs that provide internet at home for $9.95 a month, with the option to purchase a laptop for $150. So we push that information out to residents, and we also subsidize a small number of connections from year to year. I think over the last couple of years, we've given out well over 20 years worth of free internet service to residents.
That's awesome.
So because we do know it's an issue. But the thing is, DC is a resilient city, and we have resilient residents. So there are folks who will go to friends and family's houses to use the internet. They will go to the local library or nonprofit. They'll sit outside the library when it's closed. But at-home access is the gold standard. So that's why we're constantly pushing both providers and other partners to provide both affordable options and then, to Elizabeth's point, the device. Because even though I said one of the programs, the device is $150, for some residents, that is still a lot of money. So we're constantly looking for ways to lower barriers to entry and to participation.
Yeah.
One of the things that we do at IN3 is we have a program called the Futures Written in Code. And the idea is that there's a base level of technical training that you can get you into entry-level positions, but usually very often after you get in, it's like, how do you upskill yourself? I also own a software company called Clearly Innovative Inc. This October will be 10 years that we've been in business here in DC. And in that company, we started out by hiring people without computer science degrees and basically training them in-house to be web developers and mobile developers. We take a lot of that experience and we moved it over to IN3 under Futures Written in Code. So for those of you in technology, people say JavaScript is eating the world. JavaScript is a programming language that is used in a lot of companies. But to move to the next level, to do like a React.js or Angular or Vue, programming languages that is in high demand, you have two choices. You can go online to YouTube and try and learn it yourself with no mentorship, no support, nothing. Or you can pay thousands of dollars, literally thousands of dollars, to go to a dev boot camp to learn. Now, that kind of makes it inaccessible to a lot of people. So at IN3, with funding from DemPed, we've had a React.js course that's been free. We have right now we're running a Swift course, which is free. Swift is a programming language for iOS. And we just finished a Vue.js course, which is free. So and what we found from the attendees, skewed heavily towards people of color and women. But another interesting thing that we found were most of the people had jobs and they were trying to skill up. Because they kind of there was one gentleman he was a QA engineer and he's trying to figure out how to get up. He can't get training, he can't afford training, he's married, he's got kids, he's got all these other challenges, and he came because he wanted to skill up. We've had other folks who are entrepreneurs and don't really understand technology enough to hire a technical person. So they want to get some base knowledge so that they could be more successful. So, it just touches again that technology is everywhere and giving people access to the information and knowledge that they need to make the right decisions is essential.
Yeah, and Aaron, well, I was thinking, kind of about, the gaps that were identified in IN3. One of the things you guys do is you bring together a network of people. And in the Pathways to Inclusion report, one of the gaps was that lack of access to a network, which I think maybe directly resulted in your guys' formation. The other thing was, on the last panel, loved the last panel, by the way, but we heard at the end, hey, you need to raise $5 million if you're going out there. I think for a lot of us, we were like, oh, $5 million, that sounds like a lot of money. That's another thing that we identified, right, was a lack of access to capital.
Yeah.
How are you guys helping create those networks, both for career development, but also for fundraising?
So we say at IN3 that we focus on the 3 C's, technical capital, financial capital, and social capital. Just a quick anecdote. There was an article, I think it was in Vogue magazine. I don't normally read it, but I saw it on Twitter. And they were talking about how that Forbes list only had one woman on it, and they didn't even have the courtesy to get a picture of the woman on the list. But when the guy wrote a rebuttal, it was interesting what he said. He said that the process that they used was wrong, but he said that it was based on social capital, access to capital, and there was one other thing, and success that the individuals had already, and they know they need to change that model. But until they change the model, it is abundantly clear that if you do not have a network, you will fail. If you do not have money, you will fail. So what we're trying to do, once again, is to create this community of diverse entrepreneurs, so then when folks are saying, well, where are the diverse entrepreneurs? Or where can I find diverse programming? Where can I fund the diverse entrepreneur? We can say, on Georgia Avenue, at IN3DC, we have a large network of them. We've been open for 2 years. We have an 8,000 person mailing list that we built in 2 years. We've had over 300 events in that space. So if someone's saying they need to find some diverse entrepreneurs, I'd be more than happy to point you to a list of them.
It seems like you're saying, hey, diverse entrepreneurs, diverse network. Why is a focus on diversity important? And that's for anyone on the panel.
Who wants to go first?
We live in a diverse world. The world is not homogeneous. If you want to have a successful business, you should be able to speak to your entire customer base. I mean, this is the world we live in. It's not getting less diverse.
Right, and our country as a whole is is getting browner. And I
Yeah.
think that the reality is that as companies are developing products and services, as employers are working with people from diverse cultures who have different types of family structures, we have to be thinking about how we're going to prepare for that, how we are preparing our children. The world our children know is not the world that they'll be the working world now is not the world they'll be working in, hopefully. And so what we have to do is, get those structures in place that will, help them continue to grow and develop and prosper. And that means that that starts with having an inclusive work culture, having an inclusive entrepreneurship culture, so that, again, as the products are being developed, as services are being provided, we're making sure that we're preparing for everyone to take advantage of those services, not just those who have that, social and financial capital, as mentioned on the list that Aaron discussed.
I try to keep it even simpler than that. It's because those people have money, and you have a business. And the object of your business in this society we live in is to make as much money as you can. So if there's a whole segment of the world of the country that you have not figured out how to sell your products, goods, or services to, you're not doing your job.
Exactly.
So, I mean, all the other things are nice, and we can talk about those, but the lesson that I've learned with trying to grow IN3 and find sponsors, that the I don't want to call it touchy-feely stuff, but it's even as simple as sometimes the way people look at you if you say, I'm a social impact-based company versus I'm just about making money. You're laughing because you know what I'm talking about. And so, yes, diversity and inclusion is great, but to me, I'm just to cut to the chase and say, if you can't figure out how to sell to a diverse audience, your business is eventually going to get beat by someone else who can.
Absolutely.
And I would add that I think diversity is important because as a country, whether you're on the left or the right, people always talk about opportunities, equal opportunities. And I think a more diverse workforce, more diversity in education provides those opportunities. And when I say diversity, and Elizabeth mentioned this, I think oftentimes we think about the color of the faces. But so for instance, we have a program called Spark, which was created to spark an interest in technology for students, K-12 students who may not have been exposed prior to this. If all the kids in there were coming from families making $100,000, or, well, it's DC, $250,000. Yes, there would be diversity in terms of what those kids look like with respect to the tech sector in general, but that's not necessarily a diversity of experience. So I'm proud of the fact that more than half of our kids come from families that earn less than $50,000 a year. So when I say diversity, I mean both ethnic, racial, also diversity of experience and of outlook.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
people think differently about different issues. And when you get different people in the same room, sometimes you get a better product, you get a better solution than you would if you just had 50 people who all went to the same school, all, have the same background. So I think it's important for a number of different reasons. Yeah.
Absolutely. I just have a quick personal example. So I'm newly engaged and I'm very excited.
Congrats.
Thank you. And I'm marrying a woman. And so we are planning our wedding. And, first of all, it's amazing to me. I came out 20 years ago. So it's pretty mind-blowing to me that, I'm getting married to a woman and it's normal and legal. But, we have turned down vendors. This goes to your point it's about making money, right? We've turned down vendors who we've talked to and then send us a contract. And the contract says bride's name and groom's name. It really does come down to, it's obviously more than about profit, but I do think it is a way to really show the impact of this on the economy and on businesses.
So in terms of the city, tell us about some of the priorities of DMPED and some of the goals that you're working toward.
So, as I mentioned earlier, one of our main priorities is workforce. And so one of the things we're working on now is how we're going to approach workforce, how we're approaching this conversation. And we actually had a conversation. We've been having a series of conversations with tech leaders called these tech roundtables hosted by the Washington, D.C. Economic Partnership, really trying to understand what they need to grow and thrive here. And so this fall, I believe, we're going to be taking a deeper dive, looking into tech workforce, the tech talent pipeline, and what are the resources that we have here in the city, and what could we be doing better? How can we be better engaged with our community partners and stakeholders in that? We are also looking at access to capital and how we're going to support underrepresented entrepreneurs. And so moving forward, this fall, we're going to be having some announcements regarding some grant opportunities we had that were closed a few weeks ago. We have opportunities for an innovation accelerator that's going to be focused on underrepresented entrepreneurs and providing resources for them to grow. We're also going to be doing some investor engagement, getting better at understanding where the investment opportunities are for these businesses. So as we have businesses who are growing out of IN3 or other organizations and looking to accelerate, where is their access to capital coming from, and how's that going to look? So those are some of our kind of short-term priorities.
And I think people should know too about some of the report came out, and I think a lot of times when we as citizens hear, oh, the government issued a report, we just think, oh, it's going to go on a shelf and nothing's going to really happen with it. But your DMPED has really done quite a few things coming out of the report. Can you tell us just about some of the things that happened?
Yeah. So one of the recommendations of the report was to basically have an innovation hub where underrepresented entrepreneurs could be meeting and to connect different social networks. And so two of the projects that came out of that were Inclusive Innovation Incubator, which Aaron has told us about all the great things that are going on through there. Hundreds of events, thousands of people serviced, and numerous education and training programs that have come out of there that are really helping to spur our innovation economy. Another project we've been really excited to work with is Beacon, the Women's Founders Initiative. And actually, N3 and Beacon were debuted at South by Southwest a couple years ago at the same time. And Beacon Initiative, for those of you who don't know, works to connect women entrepreneurs with resources here in the city. We have been really proud to support them for the last couple of years with their grant program, providing over 25 grants to ecosystem builders that are working directly with women entrepreneurs in the city, helping them grow their business. Last year, back to access to capital, one of the other recommendations that was in the report was how do we increase access to capital for underrepresented entrepreneurs. And thankfully, the Innovation Technology Inclusion Council, and Thomas, you helped with this recommendation on how we can go about doing that. Understanding that what we're working with are taxpayer dollars, so we can't just run out and announce a X $million fund that everyone can participate in. What we did is we had a grant opportunity for $1.5 million to find a fund manager that would grow a fund to a certain amount that will actually invest in underrepresented entrepreneurs. And that the result of that is our Inclusive Innovation Fund. Still raising money, but they will be investing directly in underrepresented entrepreneurs that are DC-based here in the city. So we're very proud of those initiatives and hope to find others. We are still looking at the Access to Capital report. As I mentioned, we are looking more at some of the tech workforce initiatives as we come up. Also going to continue to look at some of our entrepreneurship initiatives and ways that we can continue to make those recommendations reality. Working very closely with you, Thomas, and the others on the ITIC on what we can do in the short term to really grow this innovation economy.
I just want to say pretty much all of the programs that I've mentioned so far out of IN3 are direct result of, so our physical space is a direct result of the outcomes of Pathway to Inclusion report, and a fair number of the programs that we have are partially funded by the mayor's office also. And to touch on all of them, Grow and Glow is our women's focused entrepreneurship program, where we have networking events, workshops, and conferences around women and women entrepreneurship. In fact, this Saturday we have a free 8-hour business boot camp that will cover Lean Canvas. We have a lawyer coming in talking about IP because everyone always asks about that. And then the other thing that we discovered through our events are a lot of entrepreneurs just don't know how to put together a financial model. And so we're actually going to spend 2 hours working with the entrepreneurs, get with handouts, and someone's going to kind of help them put together a draft financial model. So that's in the Grow and Glow. I mentioned Futures Written in Code. The other one is In3 Pitch Labs, which is where we tech-enable the business boot camp. A lot of business boot camps cover the basics, Lean Canvas, marketing, blah, blah, blah. But if it's a tech-enabled business, they don't tell you anything about how to do the technical part. Right. And so because we also own a software development company, what we do is right after you get past your Lean Canvas, we come in and we talk about the importance of UI, UX, about hiring a technical resource, about wireframes, about outsourcing, about a CTO, so that you're better equipped when you kind of leave the program on how to do something successful. And then the last one is, which is close to me, is called It's Not Just a Game. And it's focused on gaming and esports. I still play games. I have kids who play games. A lot of people play games. You shouldn't be embarrassed about it. It's a $1 billion industry. Mm-hmm. And if you look where tech was 10 years ago, in my opinion, that's where gaming and esports is now. Mm-hmm. There is a lack of diversity and inclusion there. It is a land grab, and women and people of color are not grabbing anything. And I think a lot of it's because of access to information. A lot of folks just think, oh, that's just a game. I met with some kids, and I spoke to them, and I said, how many hours do you spend watching someone stream on YouTube? These kids said they spend hours. I said, do you know that person's getting paid for that? Like, they just don't even recognize that these are things that they're doing that could be potential career opportunities for them. And the reason why we say it's not just a game is because it's not a game. Yeah. There's a lot of money. And just like tech, you don't have to be a coder to be successful in the field. You don't have to play games to be successful in esport. I just saw on my way in, for those of you who follow gaming, NBA 2K just launched. And it's crashing and burning because the software shipped with a bunch of errors. And the guys are basically saying, if they had community managers, they could have managed the situation better. Mm-hmm. That's a marketing job. So this is someone who likes games, who likes basketball. You could get a job as a community manager at a gaming company. But if you don't know these things, you would never even consider these opportunities. Yeah. So this is the type of thing we're trying to do with It's Not Just a Game.
Yeah, I think hearing from the mayor and the leaders in the city and going, hey, we're going to have a focus on inclusion and diversity as a key part of the strategy is very unique to what's happening in the district. And we look at things like the IN3 incubator, we're looking at the Inclusion Investment Fund. It is a unique capability that we have here in DC. It's a strategic advantage for us. I want to hear a little bit, Elizabeth, about Bite Back. Just diving into it, tell us a little bit more about it. And how is it unique? Because we're hearing so many unique things. How is that unique regionally and nationally?
Yeah, absolutely. So
Bite Back is a 22-year-old organization, and we were founded by two individuals here in DC who understood in 1997 that technology could provide an opportunity for people without college degrees to move into the middle class. And that remains true even more so today, 22 years later. And what's unique about us is that we start our training at a very foundational level. I think often when we talk about tech training, we think about getting someone into a coding boot camp. And first of all, there are tons of jobs in the tech sector, like these gaming jobs, which I'd never even heard of, right? that aren't software engineering jobs. Not everyone wants to be a software developer. Second of all, as Erin said, many of these programs cost thousands of dollars. And more specific to Bite Back, many adults don't have the technical skill level to walk into a coding boot camp and be able to sit down, open up a laptop, use it, understand the components of how software works. And so that's really what's unique about us, that we are working with adults who are starting at a digital literacy level, and then we help them move up into more advanced training and into industry recognized certifications. And we train people to move into jobs in IT, which is another growing field that's really accessible to folks who don't maybe necessarily want to become a software engineer. And we also help people learn how to use Outlook, how to use Excel, because you can't get a job anywhere in any kind of office without being able to use basic technology. And one more thing that's really unique in the city is the Office of the Chief Technology Officer's support of Bite Back and of digital literacy training. When I speak to other digital literacy providers, this is very rare that their city or their state funds digital literacy for adults, and it's really needed. And I just want to give a shout out to Delano for really being an innovator in this space.
I think another, you were talking about how unique it is here. Last year, I was invited to the Federal Reserve in Kansas City to meet with other individuals who run a space like IN3 across the country. The criteria for getting invited was you had to have a physical location, you had to be running programming, and you had to be open for more than a year. There are about 15 of us in the room. IN3 was the only one that was actually receiving funding from the state.
Yeah.
All of the other ones were struggling for space. I mean, that was the biggest fear everybody had, was space is capital intensive. It's really hard to get grant money, donation money to kind of cover your overhead costs. So that was their biggest fear. And the other one was just like running around trying to figure out how to get the state and local government to support the programming that they were running. Yeah. They were all running around looking for a rich uncle or just one huge investor to write a check. And anyone who's in kind of the nonprofit or grant space knows that you I was about to say a bad word. You spend a lot of time and energy chasing grant dollars.
Oh, yeah.
And the kind of result that you get, it just doesn't add up. So, I feel blessed that I was in DC and I have been given this opportunity and the support from the mayor's office to do something amazing that, fingers crossed, we'll be able to kind of take to a much bigger level in the next couple of months.
And part of the reason that, and I know Joy can attest to this as well, but part of the reason the city is so interested in investing in tech training, both for youth and adults, is because it's important to demystify the tech sector. Because for a lot of people, they hear technology and they just immediately turn off. So it's been very important for us to bring in residents who have non-traditional backgrounds, kids who may not have taken CS classes in high school or middle school or elementary school for that matter, and to introduce them to what the tech sector is like. Because some of the Bite Back graduates end up working at Octo. We've hired some at Octo. The other thing that I want to add, and one of the things that I think has been really helpful for us as Connect DC, is that we've figured out a way to reach residents who are extremely difficult to reach. Yep. Because most programs, whether inside government or outside, if there's a program that's going on, you just put it on the website. You get on social media, you say, hey, tonight at 7, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. But Connect DC is a program that was created for people who don't have access to the internet. So we've had to find creative ways to reach people, some of which are actually non-technical in many ways. So we have done street teams that have gone to all around the city. I think in one fiscal year, we had reached about 30,000 households. We just put boots on the ground, and we left information about training, about public tech access, about low-cost internet. The other thing we do is we do extensive transit advertising. So if any of you have seen ads on the train, on the bus, and it says text learn, text connect, text fix, text info to a short code, those are our ads. We have close to 18,000 people on our tech subscriber list. So every time we're getting ready to do a new event or run a new program, we have a way to reach you directly. So those things are incredibly important. When we launched our Spark programs for this year, we had over 500 families sign up in one day. And just in one day. And I'd say at least a quarter of them don't have internet at home. So we found, particularly through our partnership with BiteBack, that when you put out programs and services that resonate with residents, because there are a lot of hungry residents in DC, and I'm not just, both literal and figurative. And I know the work that I do and the work that Elizabeth does, and I think the work that we all do, we're trying to find folks who are motivated and who are hungry to improve their lives, basically. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. And I'd say being in the Deputy Mayor's Office of Economic Development, I've had the privilege of talking to other stakeholders from different cities, and they all remark on how inclusive our culture is. And I really think that is because Mayor Bowser decided to get behind a lot of these efforts. And a lot of other cities who have growing ecosystems, to Aaron's point, they have these great programs. They're really trying to look for community support to do it. And the question I always ask, like, well, how did you guys, get the political support? And I was like, well, because our executive wanted that to happen. And so I think that is, one of the driving forces behind, our inclusive innovation culture. Our government, our leaders decided this is going to be a priority, and we're going to put resources behind it, and we're going to find partners we're going to go out and do that work and really make an impact here in our city.
Yeah, I think that really makes a huge difference that Mayor Bowser set that vision out there and really believed it, went behind it, brought people in who believe in that vision too, and then have partners like WDCEP and others in the area too that believe it and that are willing to do the work of building that inclusive environment is something we can all be proud of. I want to turn to the audience, see if we have any questions before, in the back behind the pillar.
Hi there. Thank you so much for being here. Y'all are amazing. I had a question about the word inclusive and diversity and how you guys see it, because I'm someone who represents the disability community, and a lot of times when the word inclusive or diversity comes up, the disability community is never included in that conversation. And I was curious to know why you think that may be, and how the disability community can start being a part of that conversation. And when people say inclusive, they don't just think, okay, we have diverse backgrounds, we have diverse groups, but LGBTQ communities represented, but the disability communities never seem to be represented. So I'd love to know what you guys think about that.
Yeah, so when we talk about underrepresented in all of our documentation and background and outreach is people of color, women, LGBTQ, and the otherwise able. So the disability community is included in that. And so what we have done is on our Innovation Technology Inclusion Council, we've been very mindful of reaching out to that community. And I know that Gallaudet has a seat on, every university in the city has a seat for the innovation, for their innovation office to sit on our ITIC. And Ryan Malzowski from Gallaudet is on our council, very active. We do our best to engage with the disability community broadly. And if there are others out there who are thinking of ways that we could be better engaged, we would like to know that. We do have some data in our 2016 Pathways to Inclusion report on our outreach to the disability community. But when we are, and honestly, we were looking at publicly available data. And when we look at that data, that's not always what researchers are measuring for. And so if there are ways that we can do better about finding that information and ways that we can increase that outreach, I'd be happy to talk with you after the show to figure out how we can do that.
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. And like, I know that I need to do better. And so I would also love to talk with you. You know, and we have a pretty large percentage, I think about 30% of our students report having some sort of disability, but yet I don't talk about it. So I just really want to thank you for bringing that up.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
By the way, kudos. This is a very meta conversation going on right now. One of the things that was really, I think, when we started this question, when you guys started and we talked about the power of diversity and having it, it was a little while before we got to because we make better decisions. Is that the key to getting all of us moving on it? Because, you know, even if you're just a selfish organization trying to go for your own success, inclusion and more diverse teams result in better decisions, which are better profits. So even if that's the only thing you care about at this moment, I can still get you along that pathway. Is that a marketing or a messaging path that we need to do as a community?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And, you know, as we're kind of looking at the ITIC, and, you know, we have 3 subcommittees, if you will. One is focused on entrepreneurship and economic development. One is focused on workforce development. So these are kind of, you know, people maybe who are out of school, but they're kind of going through their career. And we're focused on education. So, you know, what kind of education policies can be put in place? And the focus on impact that you brought up is something we look at because there's sort of 2 sides to the coin. There's the individual, there's a what we call the supply side, so to speak. And then there's the demand side. There's the companies that are hiring employees who are selling services and things like that. We have to build a culture that sees the impact on both sides. So I think when you were saying, you know, the impact should be focused on creating profit, well, that's sort of that demand side. Those are for the buyers, the employers. We need to get them to see the upside. And the good news is I know that there are employers who have, you know, not necessarily based in DC, but who are creating jobs in DC, who are looking at this region to invest in and going, hey, one of the reasons why we're actually interested in what you're doing here is because you've created a really amazing ecosystem around that. And we're looking for how can we create more programs and so on for that side so they can see the impact that way. But on the supply side, you know, if you're, you know, a worker who's had a career and maybe that career is no longer accessible, the impact and how you measure it looks a lot different. You're just thinking like, how do I get a job that I can pay my family, or how do I get my kids into college? These are, you know, different types of impact questions, but I think you're right. You have to answer the what's in it for me, or else nobody wants to be in it. That's my perspective.
Exactly.
I mean, one of the when people ask me about IN3 and like, why do you do what you do? And, you know, most investors want to find a ready-baked entrepreneur that they can just invest in and make their money. And the analogy that I use is professional sports, right? Most professional sports has a farm league. Those professional sports leagues invest heavily in the farm system to cultivate, identify talent because they want that talent to get on the teams to help their business, right? So if this ecosystem is not going to cultivate the talent that's here, right, you're going to get stuck. You just simply can't grow. And so, you know, I mean, it took me a while to get to this because I needed to find a way to kind of address the other side of the market. And this is the pitch that I say to them. You want qualified resources for these empty jobs that you have so that you can sell more goods and services? Invest in a farm system, right? People complain about, oh, the challenges that colleges have. They're not turning out people that are job ready. Invest in training programs in the community. I mean, so at the end of the day, nothing is free, right? So someone's got to write that check to get the money on the back end.
Great panel. So I see 2 threats to inclusion. And I worked with DC residents in the past. One is the cost of living, and the other is student loans. And so just curious to get folks' take on what the city is doing to maybe address those particular threats and what some of your other organizations like Bite Back is doing.
Yeah.
So so for DC residents, possibly. So there's a couple of things that we're working on. For the cost of living, it costs a lot to live in DC. It costs a lot to buy property in DC. So one of the things we've tried to do through some of our partner agencies is increase access to opportunity for home buying, increase access to information available for home buying as well. For the student loan market, I think that is something that I think that people are exploring generally. I think it's just kind of a reality of this wave that is about to hit us, and I think it impacts the cost of living. And so what we do in our role is to try to ensure that, as I mentioned, that these jobs are available, because you cannot pay your rent/mortgage, you cannot pay your student loans if you don't have a job that is paying a living wage. So we've done a lot around living wage in the city, increasing our working to make sure that those opportunities are available to ensure that people who are residents who are here can actually afford to live here. And really just kind of looking at what we can do on our end in the economic development sector to increase workforce, to make sure that our employers have the resources they need to hire folks. I know there are a number of training resources that are coming out of our Department of Employment Services that will reimburse employers for tech training. There are a number of other incentives that are based on employers that will work with residents to hire people and help them, give them a living wage. So there are things that we're working on. I think there's always opportunity to do better, and happy to discuss that with you after the show.
And so I'd like to add one part, particularly on the student loans. So I definitely know about the affordability. I'm a DC resident, so I understand the city is not the most affordable. I'm from New York, so compared to that, it might be a little affordable. But Aaron mentioned this about some of the boot camps. And even though those boot camps cost thousands of dollars, I think at some point someone's going to ask themselves, should I take out loans to go to a four-year college to get a CS degree and then have to turn around and still be upskilled or reskilled to go and work in a tech company? Or should I make a smaller investment of a couple $1,000s to get that type of education and then go directly into a job? I mean, and then there's also career and technical education, which I'm a big fan of. So I think there are other options, and part of it comes with financial literacy, which is a whole different conversation. But I think there are options out there for residents who are interested in entering the tech field.
Yeah. I love that question, and thank you to the other questions too. We're aiming, how do we create 5,000 jobs around these initiatives? How do we help people found 500 businesses? I think the questions that you guys have brought up impact those goals. So if you have resources, if you know of information that we should know about, connect with, go on the website, connect with Joy. She'll pass it on to us. But I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to thank the panel. Can you guys give them a round of applause?